This neighborhood, most of Metro Atlanta is hot, but this is how to validate it. This is where 6. So if you remember this number, 6 months of inventory is a balanced market. Talk about absorption reports today. And if you're not familiar with absorption reports, I think you'll be very happy that you do after this time, because it really will help your sellers, and it will help you when you're advising your sellers, when you're talking to them about where should we price in the market, what does the neighborhood really look like, as far as is it hot from a seller's perspective, is it better for buyers in maybe 2 different competing neighborhoods, and so it's just giving them an overall general idea of what's really happening, what are the numbers really saying, but then also we're going to touch on how is this good for buyers, and can you use it for buyers? Why would you use it for buyers? Because we always just think maybe this report should only be for sellers, or used best for sellers. So I'm going to get started here sharing my screen. I'm going to show you how easy it really is to run this report. And it's one of those reports where after you do it a couple of times, it's going to be second nature, and you will want to run it for all of your buyers, all of your sellers, just so that you have a great idea of what's really happening in the marketplace. So I'm going to get started here. Again, raise your hand or put in the chat box if you have anything, and I'm going to share my screen with you right now. Okay, so the first thing is you're only going to need an FMLS account or a Georgia MLS account. Either way, you'll be able to access all of this. So what you'll look for in FMLS. So FMLS screen. So we just want to log in, just go basic straight into your FMLS screen. From your homepage, you'll see some titles up here. You may have run reports. You may have actually run absorption reports before, but that's where you're going to find this. So just highlight over reports. The first one in the top there just says absorption analysis. I call it reports. They call it analysis. It's the same thing. So all you'll do is just click that, and it's going to take you to this very basic screen. I'm going to increase the size just so you can see it a little bit better. But very basic screen, right? It's not like the Cloud CMA report when you're running it. It's very pretty and nice looking. This is more of a raw data type style of information. And so it's going to look just like this on your screen too. All that you'll have to do, if residential detached is the type of property you're looking for, and we'll set this up by saying you're representing a seller or you're going on a listing appointment, right? And you want to be able to advise the seller on all of these things. Well, what you really want to do is run this report to get that info. But think about it from that perspective. If it's residential detached, you'll have that. And then all we really need is the subdivision name. So you're going on a listing appointment, and let's say the subdivision name, I have an example for us today, is in the Windward subdivision. Now, I want to caution you on this. If you put in a subdivision name that's really difficult to misspell, or has multiple words, or maybe, sometimes like point, P-O-I-N-T, sometimes it might have an E on the end. Some agents might not put the E on the end in Matrix. It's going to pull exactly what you type in here. So if it's a really confusing subdivision name, or one that gets misspelled frequently, you can tell that by going in Matrix and searching and seeing how many different variations there are. You'd have to run this report for each one of those spellings. So that's where it gets a little bit tricky. So just keep that in mind. I'll tell you how to get around that in just a second. But let's say we have an easy subdivision name. We know it. It's not misspelled in any of the Matrix data, because that's where this pulls from, and say it's just Windward. So all we're going to do is put that name in here, and we're just going to say 1 month back. We'll just start there, okay? So only thing we did on this so far is just type this subdivision name. All we're going to do is click Run Report. So very easy, right? Easy so far. So on this screen is the actual results from Windward subdivision back 1 month for residential detached properties. And you're going to see a lot of stuff here. Don't get worried about it or feel like you're overwhelmed already. It's going to break down into really, really bite-sized pieces. Up at the top, you'll see less than 100,000 all the way to over 5 million. So these are obviously purchase prices for the property. And then you'll see areas down here. You may or may not see that. In Windward, there actually looks like somebody put this one sale here into area 13 when maybe it really should have been in 14, but it doesn't matter because I know that these two border each other. And so this data should be included in this data set. You might run a subdivision that has like area 13 and area 82 because the subdivision names are the same. Then you'll need to go back to that edit search where we were right here and actually put maybe the zip code or the city. So if you have a very common subdivision name that you're using, you'll know because when you click run report, you'll have this whole page filled up with different areas. So then go back to edit search, hit the city, hit the zip code, and now you'll be there. 13 and 14 are both Alpharetta, so we're good on this one. So if you do have that, you have multiple tiers, go down to the bottom. This bottom section here is going to total up everything for you. So from all of these categories, you're going to have it down here. Again, sales price is up here at the top. So what is this really telling us? All right, we're going to take it line by line. Total sales. So that's an easy one, right? We've got 12 total sales in the last 1 month in Windward for residential detached properties. That's all that means. So we've got 12 sold. Total active down here at the end, 7. So there's 7 total active properties. Average days on market for all of these price points, 7. So you're already starting to see the picture here, right? 7 properties for sale, 7 days on the market, probably going to get chewed up pretty quick in this market. You've got average days on market, 7, and average total days on market. So the difference here, don't really get too caught up in it because you'll see over here it's 7 and 7. If they, for some reason, went on hold or did something else in the MLS settings where they weren't truly active, it can affect this number. But really, if they're the same, then just keep moving. If they're not the same, I would still use probably this average days on market just in general. You've got average sales price divided by list price. So SP divided by LP. And so what does that really tell us? Well, it's going to give us a percentage number. So if you look way out here to the right, 102 is the actual number, average sales price divided by list price. So the easy way to think about this is 100% is what it lists for, it sold for. Well, if it's 102, then it actually has a 2% premium, right? If it were 98, it would have a 2% on the discount side on average for the sales price divided by list price. We know this market's hot. 102 probably doesn't really surprise much of us. So that means it lists here and it sells here, right? So that's all that means. And then you have the next category, sales price, original list price. This is where if they did a price reduction, it's going to pull, it's going to show here. So this original list price is where they originally were, and then the list price is where they ended up before they went under contract. They could be different, but in this market, you're not really seeing that. And you can see over here, the numbers are the same. So we don't really have that issue on this report. Now that all totals up. All of those numbers kind of filter into the months of inventory. We've all heard that word. I'm sure you've used it with clients. You've thought about it. You may be well-versed in months of inventory, but that's where and what this report really shows us and really boils down to is to be able to speak to clients on a basis of months of inventory. And maybe you're even talking to another agent. You're listing a property and you're trying to help them understand how hot the market is in that neighborhood. And you can give them a lot of this data, including months of inventory. So let's scroll just through these numbers and look. So we have some deals starting in the 450s all the way up, and you can see 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0, 1. So average is 1 month of inventory. So how does that number really, what you really want to think about is that there's 7 actives and there's 12 total sales, and they stay on the market for about 7 days. So that means there's 1 month of inventory, because it means once those homes hit the market, next month we run this report, those 7, technically based on the previous 30 days that we're running this report for, should be under contract, should be sold. So that's what this report tells us. That 1 means this is an extremely hot area, and you can really, or subdivision, and you can really look at this. So say 550 to 599 is maybe where a seller's thinking about pricing, or you're talking to a seller and they're in that area. 0 days on market with 1 sale. This one has 0 days on market with 2 sales. This one has, or 0 months of inventory, sorry, with 3 sales. So you can see this neighborhood, most of Metro Atlanta, is hot, but this is how to validate it. This is where to show your sellers the numbers. This is where to then show your buyers the numbers that we'll touch on in a second. So practically, how would you use this? Why would you use it? We've run the numbers. It's great for you to know, especially if you focus on an area or a neighborhood or something like that. And if you do focus on an area rather than a neighborhood, you can come back in here and choose from elementary school. You can choose from a zip code, an area like that FMLS area we were looking at. And then you could even go into resell 60-plus-year-old homes or new construction. We're putting it at any just because we want to know what's really happening in this neighborhood, in the marketplace, but you can run that as detailed as you want. If you do condos, things like that, then you'll come up here and run attached. If you do commercial land, you can run that too. So back to our example with Windward. So let's say that we are talking to a client, a seller, and maybe they're in this just broad. We haven't seen the home yet. We don't know exactly how updated it is, but based on the comps, based on the tax records and the information we have, we think this home should sell between 600 and 800. I know that's a big range, but let's just use it for this report. I just want to show you where this can come into play. So huge range. And so this is where we are, right? These two categories. Let's come down here all the way to the bottom. In the 600 to 700, we've had 2 sales. In the 700 to 800, we've had 3. Total active. So this is your competition, right? So when you're talking to the seller, hey, there's 2 properties in the 600 to 700 that's on the market. There's 0 in the 700 to 800. 5 days on market versus 21, 100% versus 98. So this is going at list price. This one's going just below list price on these 3 properties that have sold. There's 1 month of inventory and 0. I mean, that's basically a wash. They're basically very, very hot market for the sellers. So here you're advising a client. Maybe you've run the comps, you've walked through the property, they have a lot of upgrades, and maybe they're on that bridge between 700, on 700, right? Which is right between these two. So you're deciding and helping them decide based on the numbers, based on the information. Should we price, a little bit lower into the high 6s, or should we try to approach into that 7s, right? We all know people search typically in the 50K increments, right? Up to a certain amount, up to a certain amount. They're probably not going to search for up to 705 or up to 710 or 715 maybe. So you got to take that into account first. But the next thing you want to do is just come down and look at the data. Okay, if we price in this category, this is based on the numbers. If we're going fair market value, this is what we could probably expect based on what's happened in the neighborhood. If we go in this category, this is what's happened in this neighborhood. Really, these are a wash minus the days on market. When it really comes down to it, you could probably, some of these might have been 102% and a 98. Maybe this was a 96 and 100%. So it depends on the property. But really, 5 days on market versus 21 could be significant to your seller. Hey, on average, these 2 properties sold 5 days, these 3, 21 days. If they need to get out of that house quick or want to go under contract quick and get out, maybe you do price it a little bit in there. If they want to, test the market or price a little bit more aggressively, maybe you jump into this, 725 range or something like that if you think the value's there and it's a fair market value for that property. So that's how you would use it practically for sellers, is determining prices. When you get below, I think it's, when you get below 600, it actually breaks it into 50K increments, so even tighter, right? So if you had clients who were looking, or a seller who's looking maybe they're around 300K, then now you're able to divide it into 250 to 299, 300 to 349. You're going to get a little more micro picture of those properties. So this is a good report to run when you're thinking about working with a seller, where to start. I want to know in my space, like how everything's going to work in this neighborhood. What are things looking like? What are they going sales price versus list price? How many days on market? How many sales? And what's the months of inventory? When you come into a listing appointment and you're telling the seller exactly what's happening in that neighborhood, not, hey, my neighbor said he sold in 2 days and for 150%, all of these stories that neighbors hear. When you're coming in with the facts, that's really going to help solidify your position, either as a new agent, an experienced agent. It doesn't matter. The person that has the data and the information typically, looks more professional, really, when it comes down to it with the seller. So understanding that's what that report tells us. Now, that's more for sellers. If you think about it in the sense of for buyers, say somebody is buying, you're representing a client in Windward, or that wants to buy a property in the Windward subdivision, and you show them this, right? And they say, before you even show them this data, I think we've all had clients that say, hey, I actually want to offer, if the property is listed at 650, I want to offer 600 or something, right? Like some number, 80, 90, 70% of where the list price is. And so the best thing to do is run this report, show them, hey, there have been 2 sales in that 600 to 700 category, and they've gone on average 100% of list price, 5 days on market, 1 month of inventory. There are 2 actives in here. One of the ones you're looking at, I'm going to advise you and show you the data here that you're probably going to be in a very tough position to try to get anything like that. You just want to paint the picture, give them expectations. Obviously, we represent the client, but we do want to paint a realistic picture for them. So I think it's great for buyers. I personally, when your buyer narrows it down to maybe 1 or 2 areas or subdivisions, I would run this report just to have a good idea of what's going on. You may be surprised. Maybe there's a price point in there where there are some price reductions in this market. Probably not, but if you did run it, at least you'd know. You're advising your buyer, they see it and they say, wow, my agent's giving me some great advice. So that's where you would use it for the sell side, where you would use it for the buy side. And that's really it. I would still run all your cloud CMAs, all your other things that you're going to do for the seller, but I would let this be a supplement piece that you pull out and you highlight and you take your pen and you circle and show them what's happening. Again, it's a differentiator. It's a tool that maybe you have or that you're actually using. Everybody has this access, but maybe that you're actually using and that you actually understand. Last thing I want to tell you is when you're thinking about months of inventory, there's a lot of schools of thought out there, but the most common one is 6. So if you remember this number, 6 months of inventory is a balanced market, right? So you're balanced like this, like a scale, right? When you start to go less than 6, if you just think about it in general terms, we're looking at this data here. If you have something less than 6, 0, 1 through 5, it's going to be more of a whose market. More of a seller's market, right? Because you've got less months of inventory. If it's over 6, as it creeps up towards that 10 mark, you've got more months of inventory, more homes on the market, more choices for the buyers. And so it's more of a buyer's market, right? So just in general terms, just think about it like that when you're looking into and trying to decipher all of this info. But 0, 1, 2, that's an extreme seller's market, very hot for sellers. And so when you're explaining that to your client, they're going to appreciate it on the buy or sell side. Go run these reports if you haven't before for your area or for your neighborhood or clients looking in a certain area or something, and just get familiar with it, because you want to be able to do this like we did in a minute. Really, we really just ran this in 2 clicks and then now we have the data. And so it's easy to have. The only downside to this is there's not a print here button. You do have to go into the settings and click print to actually print it and take it with you, but it's worth it. It's worth it to print this black and white, in color, whatever. This is a truly, in my opinion, the best all-in-one report for an agent to be able to tell their clients some information.